Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to talk a little bit today about education. Everybody grown now. Let's get the educational grown out of the way. And I want to take you on a journey from what used to be, what is, and I want to paint a picture of what can be for you. And we're going to go from one-room schoolhouse to a community of learners. That's a report card. And by traditional standards and typical measures, that kid, average at best. And guess what? That's me. School superintendent with 2,600 kids, and that's my sophomore year. Troy Evans said, "Your greatest passion comes from your greatest hurt." My dad's a principal. My mom's a teacher. And those are my grades. So, our system is broken. It's broken because we tell all of you that we do all kids and that we educate all kids. And you know what? The superintendent's here to tell you we don't. And that has to change. We have an acceptable rate of failure in an industry when that is unacceptable. If a nuclear power plant failed the way we fail kids, all over the news. And yep, I just said that. And I'm not here to make excuses today, because a lot of educators do that really, really well. And I'm not here to ask you for any money, because we do that pretty well too. So if I don't want money, and I'm not here to make excuses, what am I here to do? Well, I'm going to start with some disclaimers, because I have to do that. Because what I'm going to talk about is going to make some people really uncomfortable. And I didn't pay him. There are some amazing teachers out there. They eat it, drink it, breathe it. They love teaching and learning as much as I do. They're phenomenal. You listened to one earlier today. And I'm going to make some general statements, and they don't speak to all teachers, like I'm going to talk about all kids. And this isn't an attack on teachers. And it's not an attack on the educational system. Teachers are working in a system that they were educated in and worked for them. I don't know very many teachers who said, "Man, I'm going to go into this to change it." They liked it. It worked for them. They did school well. And so they go and they want to teach because they like it. And educational change is hard. All of you work in industries or are a part of places where culture is a huge part of what you do. I'm going to argue that culture is one of the biggest things that we deal with in education, because the system hasn't changed in 100 years. And I'm going to ask you to think about letting us do some things differently with your kids. And that's going to be hard for you too, because school worked for most of you sitting in this room right now. And if it didn't, you figured it out. And you were successful. And now we're going to talk about some uncomfortable things. We aren't meeting the needs of all kids. We know it. And we have the skill to fix it. The question is, do we have the will? And are we looking at it from the right perspective? There are 2,600 kids in my district. There are 1.6 million students in school across Michigan right now. And they all look different. Look at the person sitting next to you and think about how different they are from you. Now think 2,600 sitting 15 miles south of here in Hamilton, and 1.6 sitting across this state. And the task to educate every last one, gets a whole lot bigger. And we put barriers up and ask you to trust us. Send us your kids on that school bus that's structured, and we put them in a system, and we say, don't pay no attention to that man behind the screen. Let us do what we do. We're the professionals. And that has to stop. Because teachers can't do it alone. This problem is bigger than me, and it's bigger than them. It has to be addressed by all of us. Educators are taking a beating, and some of it's deserved, and I'll own that. I've been a superintendent for 6 years, principal for 2, and a teacher for 5. So some of this happened and continues to happen on my watch, but I'm saying it stops now. Because your kids and my kids deserve it. I sat in a meeting with a group of teachers, and they were so excited about what they're going to do for their kids this year. Project-based learning, design thinking. But that's so different from worksheets, sit and get, drill and kill, that they know they're going to get pushback not just from their fellow teachers, but from some of you. Because it doesn't look like what you went through and school worked for you. And they said, we're getting kicked in the teeth. It's time we move our face. Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. I agree. So why is a school superintendent up here trying to tell you next how to solve this problem? Let's flash back to that report card. Okay? I'm in a great spot to disrupt this thing. Because we have to stop doing school the way that we've always done it. So I watched this great talk, TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and this golden circle and his what and how and why, and he flipped it around and said, let's start with why. And I said, I can do that for education. And it sits on a big poster board in my office. And so I took some liberties with what I think is the current model, and I started with what? What do we do? Well, your school, you educate kids. Okay. How do we do it? Teacher-centered, time-bound, traditional industrial model based on a traditional agrarian 9-month calendar. And why do we do it? 9 out of 10 teachers will tell you they do it because they love kids. And I'm here to tell you that they don't love all kids. They love the ones that look like them. They love the ones that are charismatic and can do some things on their own. But when you are working on your last ounce of energy, and that kid who doesn't look like, sound like, comply, or do what you ask him to do, needs one more thing, it's hard to love him. So I changed it up, and I said, let's start with why. And this is my why. I want to provide a personal learning experience with exceptional results for all children, preparing them for their future, not my past. How am I going to do that? In a student-centered, flexible model that addresses time, space, choice, delivery, experience, and mentorship. Remember that mentorship piece. So what do we do from that way? We prepare kids for their future by cultivating lifelong learning. Want to come be a learner? We know some things. We know that job growth in Ottawa County is on the rise. We know that there are 3 forces in our community. There's a demand for talent. There's a need for post-secondary training. Notice I didn't say a 4-year institution. Post-secondary training. They have to go beyond a high school diploma. And for me, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care, if it's not a 4-year Hope degree. I don't care if it's not a 2-year GRCC degree. I don't care if it's technical training. I want them to be prepared for the life that they want. And that's going to look different for each and every one. Then there's a need for 21st century skills, and I apologize to the creator of this because I crossed out his 21st century skills because it's 2013, right? We're pretty far into the 21st century. Let's stop talking about them like they're 21st century skills. We're here, we're living it. The kids that are graduating today were born in this century. They need a diverse skill set that allows them to fulfill their dreams. And mom and dad, that's not your dreams. There's a lack of relevance between content and the student. I wasn't a great kid. I showed you that. I wasn't a great kid because it wasn't relevant. I didn't like math for the sake of math. I didn't want to write because the teacher told me to write. I argued with my teacher better than I complied with my teacher. And you saw the results. But we have a significant opportunity here in this community to do good because K-12 education and my colleagues, one who had the opportunity to stand on this stage last year, and yep, I just, as a public school superintendent, referenced a charter school superintendent. Post-secondary education and employers have a sweet spot with kids. We can connect them to real life learning. And we need mentors that are in this audience and in this community to help us connect to them, to a business, and to what real life looks like. Because this is their real life. The Michigan Department of Ed in 2006 put out a Michigan Merit Curriculum. Highlighted 3 things: rigor, relevance, relationships. I can live with them all. But words have power, and delivery has power. And I don't like these words in this order. If we start with relationships, we can make it relevant, and we can increase the rigor. The state's got it backwards. It's not, let's make it more rigorous from the start. I love rigor. I want my kids to have all the rigor in their education that they can stand. But a teacher who has a relationship with my son or my daughter is going to get 10 times more out of them than one who doesn't. We know learners need certain things. They need to work toward their future, not be confined by our past. And I say that repeatedly because you need to think about that. What I want to do with school is very different than what you're used to. They need to work in multiple settings. They need to be outside. They need to work in spaces where desks aren't in a row and they don't see gray cinder block and they don't see asbestos-filled tile to best learn. They need to be exposed to multiple forms of instruction, project-based learning. They need lecture. They need skill practice. They need to think like a designer. They need to do all of those things so that when they're done walking through a K-12 experience, they've learned in every modality we can think of giving them so that when they walk out into a job or a career, they're comfortable and ready. And they need to be engaged in experiences. I said it before, content isn't relevant. Math for the sake of math isn't relevant. We teach math, but we don't teach it in context. And that's really hard for a lot of kids. The smart ones, they're going to succeed despite us. We've got to do something different for all kids. And we can do this for them if we do some things. We move away from 7:30 to 2:30 in a 9-month year. The idea that at 7:30, I walk into the building, I sit down, I put my butt in the seat, and I'm a learner. That doesn't work. 6:30 in the morning, I walk out of my room. On the couch is my 8-year-old son, laptop open, iPad in his hands. Sorry, Travis, we're going to do digital for a minute. He's playing Minecraft, watching a video teaching him how to do in Minecraft what he wants to do. He's learning at all hours of the day. He's constantly learning. He's a sponge. He's creative. He's fearless. And we will not educate that out of him. We have to be open to a flexible approach. It's got to look different. And we have to connect our communities and the diverse resources that sit in this room and are in our backyard to our kids and our schools. And we've got to admit that we need help. And that's what I'm doing. I can't do it alone. I love kids. Ask my wife. I never shut it off. And sometimes to the detriment of my kids. It takes a village to raise a child. And I'd argue that it takes a community to educate one. I live by this quote. 100 years from now, it won't matter what my bank account was, the house I lived in, or the car I drove. What will matter is that I made a difference in the life of a child. Those are mine. And I want for them what I want for yours. But I need the permission to do it differently. And we can do more good. And all we need is, well, it's not this, and it's not an excuse. It's this, and it's this, and it's you. Thank you.